Venus, the planet of relationships, love, and preferences, enters the sign of Capricorn, where she says, I choose to be responsible for my own needs and desires. Hi friends, it's Emily with Emily T. Astrology, and I am your host for Hermes Speaks, this weekly astro check-in where we explore the current quality of time and we bring in some mercurial insights through the written word and the divinatory practice of bibliomancy. First of all, happy holidays, everyone! As this is airing on the 24th of December, Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas to those of you celebrating. Those of you who celebrate Hanukkah, I hope it was beautiful. And perhaps most importantly for an astrology show, happy solstice, everyone. Today, the 24th, about 3 days after the solstice, is when the sun, after standing still, which is what solstice means, begins its slow journey higher into the sky, of course, in the northern hemisphere, here where I live. So it is a very symbolic time of the new year. It is the rebirth of the sun, and it's no coincidence that we celebrate Christmas, the birth of the sun, around the time that our solar sun begins to be reborn in the sky. So happy holidays, happy solstice, everyone. This week, Wednesday, December 24th through Tuesday, the 30th of December, is a little bit quiet in terms of astrological transits. Today, on the 24th, Venus does move into the sign of Capricorn. A little bit later in the week, we have Mars in a harmonious aspect to our lunar nodes, the nodes of fate. And then we do have a Mercury square to Saturn coming through on the 29th or 30th, depending on your time zone. And because this is a quieter week, I'm going to focus this episode as a reflective look into Venus in the sign of Capricorn. But if you are wanting to dive into that Mercury square to Saturn, then I recommend taking a look at this video where you can see myself and my fellow co-hosts over at Nightlight Astrology with Adam Ellenboss. We do monthly horoscopes, and the Venus in Sagittarius square to Saturn in Pisces is the final of several squares taking place from planets in Sagittarius to Saturn in Pisces. And in that episode, we break down your horoscopes for each sign regarding those squares. So if you're wanting to check out how the Mercury square Saturn might show up for you in your life, give that video a listen. But for our purposes here today, Venus in Capricorn. Before we look at Venus specifically in Capricorn, let's just talk about what the planet Venus signifies regardless of which sign or which house, for that matter, she falls into. Venus, Aphrodite, is the planet that speaks to our relationships, love, what attracts us, our tastes and preferences, art, aesthetics, women, sisters, and harmony. So when we explore Venus in any sign, we are looking at these primary significations and how they might be colored by the sign in which she is currently transiting or in your natal chart. So I have a little confession. Venus is in Capricorn in my natal chart. This is my natal Venus placement. And I have to admit, when I first was falling in love with astrology several years ago now and hungrily devouring any piece of content I could on astrology, I didn't really love my Venus placement in Capricorn. I had a stereotype in my mind of Capricorn as being the sign of the CEO, a place of maybe status or power hunger, a place of desiring success materially and achievement, kind of a go it your own, work hard, be the mountain goat, climbing the mountain step by step on your own in pursuit of success at all costs. And I didn't really love the idea that Venus, being the planet that speaks to our tastes and preferences, in my chart, representing that I was attracted to status, that I was attracted to material success, maybe a little cold or serious, lacking romance, right? This didn't sound very appealing, and it also didn't feel like it fit with what I know of myself. And I think this shows how sometimes if we fall into listening to pop astrology, we might be turned off and feel like, well, it doesn't work. It doesn't speak to who I feel that I am. And so then we can write off astrology as a whole. But I was too in love with astrology to give up on that. And so I further reflected and learned more and studied more. So let's just start at the beginning. What are some of the basics of the sign of Capricorn? Well, Capricorn is an earth sign, which means it speaks to physicality, the material, practicality, and pragmatism, groundedness in general. Capricorn is a nocturnal or feminine or yin sign, which means that it is receptive. It is process-oriented. It's slower and more receiving than outwardly expressive and fast-moving. And it is also a cardinal or tropical sign, which means that it is the beginning of the season, one of the 4 turning points of the year, as we just talked about. We just had our Capricorn solstice. And so this speaks to its initiatory quality, its beginning. It's a hinge point in the solar year. And what else do we need to discuss if we're talking about the sign of Capricorn? Well, of course, we need to look at the planets that are associated with the sign. First and foremost, the planet that hosts Capricorn, the planet who is at home or said to be in domicile in Capricorn, is Saturn. Saturn is our furthest visible planet in the solar system. It speaks to boundaries and limitations, the boundary line between the heavens, the celestial sphere coming down into the earth. It is a planet that speaks to mastery and maturity, challenges and perseverance, responsibility and duty. And the other planet that we have to mention when talking about Capricorn is, of course, Mars. Mars is the planet that is said to be exalted. Mars, when in Capricorn, is an honored guest. When Mars is in Capricorn, its will, drive, and passion has grit, has the ability to stick to something and to follow through. It is much less impulsive than Mars is in its home sign of Aries. Mars in Capricorn has the ability to have kind of a slow burn passion, determination to follow through and see a task done. So these 2 planets are our main rulers of the sign of Capricorn. Saturn, the domicile ruler at home there, and Mars, the exalted planet that is an honored guest when in Capricorn. It should be noticed that these are our 2 malefic planets. And when I say the malefic planets, this is not referring to bad or good, the malefic and benefic planets. They don't mean bad or good or have any moral judgment applied to either of them. Astrology, as I see it and as was practiced by the ancients, astrology encompasses every aspect of our lives as humans, having a human experience, eternal souls having a human experience. And all of us have experiences in our lives, situations and challenges that we might consider subjectively challenging, less comfortable, painful. We all are passed over for a promotion that we really wanted, or we all cut our finger when chopping vegetables. We all go through breakups or the loss of a beloved pet. These types of things are part of our human experience, and most of us would categorize these as subjectively uncomfortable, challenging, painful, or negative. And it's these aspects of our experiences and our lives that are referenced when we talk about the malefic planets. These planets were given the assignations of representing these experiences. So what does this mean that Capricorn, the sign we're talking about today, its two ruling planets are the two malefics? Well, I think it can be summed up in the phrase, we can do hard things, right? When Mars is exalted and has grit and stick-to-itness and determination and a slow-burning will and passion and drive, and Saturn is able to steadfastly, committedly, with responsibility and duty and honor and integrity, climb the mountain, right? When we have these two qualities together, Saturn able to persevere through challenges, able to learn through receiving a no or failing at something. This is the grit that we develop in life when we do hard things. And so Capricorn is a sign that says we can do hard things. We can do hard things. And so back to Venus, right? What does Venus say in this sign of we can do hard things? Well, Venus, our planet of love, relationships, taste, and preferences, when in Capricorn, yes, does she maybe appreciate classic style that never goes out of style? Is her aesthetic maybe simple and pared down and classic? Sure. Does she sometimes feel a little serious or cold, not especially romantic or frivolous when it comes to her approach to relationships? Sure. Does Venus sometimes feel a little bit solitary? Saturn being the ruler of Capricorn, the planet Saturn is said to rejoice in the 12th house, which is a place of solitude. And there is kind of an aloneness quality to that goat climbing the mountain. Yes, right? These stereotypes that I originally had about my natal placement of Venus in Capricorn, well, like all stereotypes, they didn't come out of nowhere. They have some basis in the significations of the sign, right? But I think also that Venus, when in Capricorn, has integrity. She maybe takes her time in choosing who she is going to love, who she is going to commit to. But when she does, she knows that that choice, it has integrity, right? When Venus is in Capricorn, there is a commitment to loving with grace, with honor, right? There isn't, in terms of the preferences and style, there isn't a lot of fluff. It's not romantic and frivolous, but it's honest and realistic and true and classic, right? Venus in Capricorn is not afraid to commit. It is not afraid to do the work And come on, we know relationships take work. I've been married for 13 years, and, relationships take work. Venus in Capricorn is not afraid of the work. Venus says, I can do hard things. We also have to remember that Capricorn is more than just the mountain goat. Traditionally, Capricorn's totem was the Seagoat. This is a mythical creature. The front half of the body is the mountain goat, capable of climbing the mountain step by step in a solitary, determined way. But its bottom half is a fish's tail. This speaks to the fact that Capricorn has a mysticism to it, has an enigmatic connection to source. And this is one of my favorite teachings by my really extraordinary primary astrology teacher, Adam Ellenboss, over at Nightlight Astrology. And you can hear him speak about this in several videos, I'm sure, much more eloquently than I will be able to. But one of my favorite teachings that I have learned from him is that Capricorn is the sign that was called the gateway to the gods. If Capricorn's counterpart, Cancer, across the way in the zodiac, is the gateway of mankind, when we pass through as souls into bodies, we become embodied to have a human experience here on this life. Well, Capricorn is the gateway of the gods, where our spirit souls that have been within our bodies have hopefully lived a life of integrity and developed a legacy worth remembering. And this is where we can reconnect back with source. And so I think Venus in Capricorn, yes, is steadfast, is serious, is determined and committed, and maybe not romantic, but realistic, and knows her choices of partners are honorable and worthy. But there is also a deep sense of Venus being connected to something of the divine, something enigmatic. At the end, at the beginning, at the root of all things, we are love, right? And if we're going to be on a pursuit, if we're going to climb the mountain, if we are going to pursue greatness and honor and integrity, if we are going to persevere through the hard things and reach the top of the mountain, the highest point of the mountain is in recognizing that we are love. And so I think Venus in Capricorn has that potential to be honest and realistic and full of integrity around the fact that it's all love, right? We're all love. We're all love. And then our job, Capricorn wants a job in this life, is to find relationships, to commit to relationships that honor that initial root of love. Now we come to the part of the show where we bring in those mercurial messages offered through the written word and the divinatory act of bibliomancy. Bibliomancy is a divinatory craft, just like approaching the I Ching, consulting the tarot, using oracle cards, where we take a book, meditate on a concept, a question, or in this case, the placement of Venus in Capricorn. We open the book at random and we see what messages in the book are offered through the oracle. And, I had to. The very first book that I thought of when thinking about Venus in Capricorn was, of course, All About Love by Bell Hooks. I mean, if you know the book, right? It had to have been this book. And I thought about Venus in Capricorn, and I opened the book, and we're talking about age here. Capricorn is the sign of age, and I'm in my 40s. I need my reading glasses. And I read this. Oh, first of all, I should say, I opened to a page that was within the 4th chapter, and the title of the 4th chapter, Commitment. Let love be love in me. Right? I know. Okay, and so this is the actual page and passage that I opened to. One woman I spoke with was inhibited because her husband worked in a plant and she felt uncomfortable having more education than he did. Yet she wanted to re-enter the workforce and needed an advanced degree to do so. She made the choice to take responsibility for her needs and desires, believing it would also enhance the well-being of her family. Returning to work boosted her self-esteem and changed the passive-aggressive rage and depression that had developed as a consequence of her isolation and stagnation. Making this decision and finding ways to realize it was not an easy process, however. Her husband and children were often disgruntled when her independence forced them to accept more household responsibility. In the long run, everyone benefited. And it goes without saying that these changes boosted her self-esteem in ways that showed her how self-love made it possible to extend herself in a constructive way to others. I mean, I don't even think I need to say very much, right? It's like, it kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? Doesn't this passage sum up Venus in Capricorn? A Venus that has integrity, a Venus that chooses with empowerment. Mars is exalted in Capricorn, right? That chooses with empowerment and a sense of agency to honor her own needs and desires, to be responsible for her own needs and desires, and in so doing, recognize that she is more capable of constructively honoring the needs and desires of those that she loves. And those that she loves and cares for and constructively provides for are people who she chose. Not willy-nilly, but honorably and with integrity. She chose to love these people. And we've all heard the saying, right? To put on your own oxygen mask first. Yeah, I think this speaks to that. And it speaks to that solitary quality too, that Saturn-ruled sign, Saturn rejoicing in the 12th house of isolation and solitude. That when it comes down to it, and that mystical seagoat tail that's waving in the waters of source, that we are at the root of all of it. We are love, right? We are love. And Venus in Capricorn recognizes we are all love, and so therefore I am love, and so therefore I must honor myself and love myself, and in so doing, love others. And so I hope that if you, like me, feel like Venus in Capricorn might be stodgy or cold or unromantic or only care about status and success, I hope that this little exploration into the sign expanded your idea of the goddess of love in this place. Please do let me know if you have Venus in Capricorn yourself, or if you know someone who does and you care to share how this resonated or landed with you. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Thank you so much for being with me here today. I so appreciate you spending your time to listen to me pontificate, which I know that I can be a little preachy. I hope you got something out of it. If you liked this content, please do give me a like, subscribe, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of this. And, if you have been wanting a year ahead reading, we did just pass our solstice. We're moving into a new year. We've already begun our new year with the solstice. Come see me. I love meeting with clients. It is when I feel most aligned. You can go to emilytotomer.com if you'd like to book a reading with me. I'd love to connect with you. I also recently offered a workshop in collaboration with Megan McDonough of Magnetize Your Light. She has a channel here on YouTube, Magnetize Your Light, and the Intuitive Insights podcast. She offers quarterly workshops for her members, and I recently gave a workshop on the Siren Call of Neptune, how to delineate Neptune in your natal chart. If that is something that is of interest to you, I will link that in the description of this video. You can go check that out. Happy holidays, everybody. I'll see you next week.